Hello, my friend Ben.
Hello, Mr. What's your last name, Joffrey?
Chalco. Uh,
Chalco.
exactly. Is it
What is that?
easy for you to pronounce?
What is that?
Chalco.
Is that French or German? What is that?
I don't know. Maybe it's an Ecuadorian last name.
I was joking. It's extremely Ecuadorian. I
And
was
what
being
about your
sarcastic.
your last name?
Bloomfield is my last name. Bloomfield.
Bloom. Okay. Does bloom it by itself has any meaning? Bloom. B
By
L O
itself,
O M.
does it have a meaning?
Does it have a meaning by itself?
Does, yes. To bloom is like to flourish.
Flourish. Okay.
You know, for example, these
When the
flowers will
flowers.
bloom, you know, in summer, for example.
And field is like a land.
A field is like an open space. For example, where you can play soccer is a field.
So are you a flower kind of?
So it's a very masculine
No, no,
last
no, no,
name,
no,
isn't
no. I don't think
it?
so.
It's very manly,
No,
very
no, no,
rough.
no, 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 no. I don't think so.
Chalco is we have there's a cheese in Chile. It's very, I don't know if it's chalco or it's a cheese. It's called
But it is not related with flowers or things like
well,
that.
chalco is very chalco almost sounds like charco, which is a puddle, right, in Spanish.
Yes, yes, but it doesn't
So
affect the masculinity of
I'm going to call
the.
you Puddle Boy now. Puddle. Just for those who don't know what a puddle is, it's when it rains and then water accumulates, like, and if you step in it, you can get wet. That is a puddle.
Exactly, and I will call you Mr. Flowers
Mr.
or
Flower Field,
a flower field.
field of flowers.
I think that your masculinity is not is not happy if I will call you Mr. Flowers.
If I call you,
If I call you Mr. Flowers, but
I've
I don't
never
have any problem if you call me
Puddle
like
Boy.
exactly.
I don't like, but I never thought about that. Like about my, I never analyzed my last name in Australia. I think people do it here because they translate from like they translate to their language, and that's when it starts sounding strange. But I
But
never like
but
I never
sometimes
had
it
this
helps.
conversation.
But
I
sometimes it
never had.
helps. For example, with brands, like the last conversation that we had, with you talk about
We
Dodge.
had.
We had the last conversation that we had. We talk about Dodge.
Talked.
We talked.
Can you please conjugate the verbs, please, in the past simple?
Okay, thank you. We talked about the car brands and Dodge, for example. So, now it makes sense for me, like Dodge. So now Bloomfield,
I know
flowers, and it makes sense for me. Like, oh, man, flowers makes sense.
people obviously, you know, or inevitably translate to their native tongue. That happens a lot. But I'm just saying that in Australia, I never had the conversation about my last name, Bloomfield. Nobody ever asked me, does that mean like flowers flourishing in the fields? Like, because nobody ever translated my last name into another language, really, because most of
Okay.
everybody I knew was from Australia. So nobody ever made that, made that translation.
Okay. Okay. And I think it is the same here
But
with our
I don't know
last
about
names.
you, but I hate it when like teachers use like translate and like I have obviously because I live in South America, specifically Chile. I have a lot of Spanish speaking students,
Hmm.
and I speak Spanish, but I don't use it. I almost never use it to teach English. I don't think you need to. I think that lazy teachers or bad teachers use their native language to teach because uh, you can transmit an idea without using the person's normally. Sometimes I can understand, but if a student, a lot of the times, a student we will be speaking, and they say, "Oh, how do you say this in English?" And they say the word in Spanish,
Hmm.
and I say, "Hey, don't tell me in Spanish. Explain to me." what this word means, you know, like, and that's always my first recommendation.
But I think, from my point of view, it depends on the specific level of the student. Because if someone is just starting in English, maybe they won't have any idea how to explain something in English, for example.
Well, that's the thing. A good teacher can teach anybody English from any country.
From zero?
That's right, yes.
Maybe using images or something like that, I think.
It's tricky, but it's possible. A good teacher can do that, definitely. And I have done that before, and it's hard, but it's part of the job.
Yes,
and actually
and that's the way that the children learn a language, for example, when they are just growing up, nobody's translating the language because they don't understand anything. They are just listening and trying to relate and trying to understand what their parents are telling them. So I think that's a good idea.
Another problem with like English levels in South America and other countries is that the methodology teachers use to teach English. A lot of it is book-based, not very interactive, not a lot of speaking. You know, it's read this, fill in the gaps, no talking. I mean, it's obviously difficult when you have a class of 30 students, but I remember when I had a course in a big hotel a couple of years ago, and, you know, the classes were quite big. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I did was instead of me at the front and everybody sitting in front of me in rows, the first thing I did is I changed the seats and I made all the seats into a circle.
Okay.
So everybody could see each other. You know, it wasn't just a group of people looking in front at a teacher. No, okay. First of all, I put the seats in a circle to make it a very interactive environment. And then I tried to teach, you know, and then we just went around kind of asking questions to each other and answering questions. And it's a much more interactive approach, because my focus is always to teach people how to talk and understand English, to answer questions, to ask questions. If somebody wants to study grammar or, you know, practice, you know, writing, I always tell them to do that in their own time. But when you're with me, we're going to be speaking as much as possible.
Yes, but I think.
And here comes the doubters. Here we go, right? You're one of the doubters, right? Here comes the people, the doubters who think, no, it's not right, or you've got to do it like this. People, there is a big misconception about how to learn English.
Yes, but I think that each one has a different approach how to learn. That's what I'm going to say. Because, for example, I have friends that they like just to read something and then to practice a little. And there are other people.
But that's the problem. You ask them a question, they don't know how to answer because they never speak.
Exactly. But
like people come to me.
The problem is if you just speak and speak and speak and you don't read anything related with grammar or to
well, that's the thing.
The
teacher has to be teaching you about grammar while you are speaking with the, you know, I teach my students how to build sentences using the right grammar, you know, tenses and constructions, but it's a very interactive approach as well.
Exactly. But exactly, to teach, to talk with a teacher.
Essentially,
but when you talk with somebody who is not going to correct you, to highlight your mistakes.
That's a kind of a waste of time. You're right. But
exactly.
What you need to give the student the ability to build a sentence. Okay, that is, for example, to have your pronoun or your subject, and then your verbs, and then your adjective. You need to give them the knowledge to be able to build a sentence in a different verb tenses in present and past and future, to ask questions in present, past, future, to answer in negative and positive. You need to give them the knowledge and the tools to be able to build the sentences. And then once they understand that, they have that base, then you need to get them to be using it as much as possible.
To make mistakes. I think that that's the key to make mistakes, to let the students, to let us to make mistakes as much as possible. And then it will help our brain to avoid doing those kinds of mistakes, because it is easy to forget something that you teach me if I'm not using quite often, if I'm not making mistakes. That's
the thing. A big problem I see is that teachers will dedicate a lesson to learning some particular grammatical concept that students never going to use really.
Exactly.
Or maybe the student still can't even ask a question or answer a question in the past simple, in the future simple, and the teacher's teaching them this very obscure grammatical concept that doesn't help. They need to start speaking and learning to speak, and you are correcting them. But that's the thing. There are many reasons why English levels are really poor, but a big problem is the standard of teaching. It's very variable. The concepts are very variable, and obviously it's much easier to just give a student a piece of paper and tell them, okay, work through this, and then we're going to check it. It's much easier and more comfortable for a teacher to do that than to be actually asking and correcting and interacting with a student. That requires a lot more energy, but that's what you need to do.
Exactly. So yes, to make mistakes, and each teacher has their own approach.
Well, that's the problem. A lot of them have shitty approaches. You know what I mean? That's the problem. A lot of them have shitty approaches.
Exactly. I've been looking for different teachers, and yes, some of them just tell you, now read it, now fill in this.
Or some of them are not correcting you. You're speaking and oh man, I'm speaking like shit here, and the teacher's not correcting you. He's not telling you.
That's another
they're not saying sorry mate, it's not like that. You need to say it like this. They're not telling you what you're doing wrong, and they're letting you speak, which is great, which is what you want, but they're not correcting you and keeping you in, maintaining you in the right direction.
Exactly. But the problem, because I think, is that some of the students get frustrated when the teacher corrects them a lot of times.
Well, there's two ways. There's two ways you can do that, and I do this according to the student. I have two ways. I either correct the student while they are talking, every single time. It could be for the smallest mistake. While we're talking, I jump in with the correction, or I take notes of the problems that the student makes without interrupting them, and then I look at those mistakes, at the end of the class with the student, and I base that on the student. Everybody's different. Some people need and want that correction in the moment, because if not, that it just doesn't stick.
Exactly. Your brain is going to forget that. So.
Other students don't like the constant interruption, and they prefer that you let them speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when you interrupt a person, their train of thought gets completely derailed and they forget everything. So
I like that expression. Sorry for interrupting you. Your train of thought.
Yeah, your train of thought.
It's in singular or in plural? Your train of thought or thoughts?
No, in singular. Your train of thought gets derailed and you forget everything. So, like I said, I'm a Nazi with speaking well. You have to speak well, and the corrections have to be there. But the way that I give those corrections is based on the student and how receptive they are to different types. And you learn that through a couple of classes. You can see like if what system works with you. And sometimes you need to incorporate the two. Sometimes you will need to be interrupting occasionally when a mistake is just needs to be corrected because it's really holding them back, but you're also taking notes. So you know, it's interesting, but I've tried the both systems of I used to interrupt my students in the moment of speaking all the time, every time with all my students. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to not interrupt any of them. I'm just going to compile their mistakes in a Word document while they're speaking. I'm not going to say anything. And then I'm going to look at it with them at the end of the class. So I did both of those systems for many years. And I finally found out that the best way is just based on the student. Because sometimes when I wasn't correcting some students while they were speaking and I was just taking notes and looking at those mistakes at the end of the class, I found that some students weren't progressing very, very, very well with that system.
Exactly, because they will forget.
Others, yes. Others, yes. Others were yes, because they were able to speak and they were able to take note of that information, like at the end of the class when they weren't speaking, and they enjoyed looking at it with me, and others needed that instant correction. Others responded better to that. So again, it's based on the student.
Exactly. So my recommendation as students that I'm learning English, for all of the people who are learning English, is to read something or to have a class with someone and then to speak and to make as many mistakes as they want speaking.
And also you need to demand a lot from your teacher. If you are not getting those corrections either in the moment or at the end of the class, then you need to get another teacher, because the teacher's being lazy. It's not doing their job.
Exactly. Some of them are just listening to you, waiting, when the class is going to be over. And then, okay, you did great, my friend. We will talk next class. What?
Yeah,
I realized that I made a lot of mistakes, but you didn't correct me all the time.
Okay.
What happened?
Well, for some people, it's just a job.
Exactly.
But for other people like myself, for me, obviously, I know that I work and I do this for a living and make money. But the most important thing for me is that my student learns to speak well because of the classes with me. That's my number one goal. That's all, and I'm very committed to doing that. And if you don't have a teacher with that same vision, then yeah, you need to find another one. For me, it's not about, you don't necessarily need a teacher that knows everything about grammar, all the rules. That would be great. But the most important thing for me is that you have a committed and passionate teacher.
Exactly.
Okay? That is the most important thing.
Because exactly, when you are a student, but because I was a teacher too, so that's a problem. Some students just ask you, like, do you know this rule? For example, I'm not a dictionary. I cannot remember all the Spanish stuff. I was a Spanish teacher. So in my head, so let me check it out. Let me look up on the internet or something like that. And I will correct you when you make a mistake. I will help you when you make a mistake. Yes.
I've got to go, mate. I've got a class now.
Okay, my friend. So thank you. And we will talk soon.
Oh, well, I'm sure I'll see your ugly face tomorrow.
Same here.
Okay, mate.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.